In this video, we are going to create the materials for the teeth and for the tongue. So let's get right to it. Now the teeth is going to be really simple. Just create a new material, call it teeth. We're not going to use any textures. We don't really need to. I'm going to delete the diffuse with the X button, Shift A, search, and look for the principled shader, and then Control Shift on the principled shader. Change the base color to pure white to make the teeth brighter. There you go. Whoops. Quite the opposite. Okay. And we're going to change the roughness. So I'm going to put it down so that it becomes more glossy, because the teeth is always touching the saliva from the tongue and it makes it look glossy. So I'm going to just double check the value that I used. It is 0.148. There you go. And that's pretty much all you need to do for the teeth. It will look good as it is. So let's just take a quick look. So there is some glossiness, a bit hard to see over here, but in this section you can see it. And I don't want to put a lot more than this, it'll look a bit weird. So I think this is a good value to stop at. I'm going to grab the other one, just look for the teeth material. And since we're not using any texture, we don't really have to change anything. So we're going to stop right there for the teeth. Now for the tongue, let me just separate it with the /numpad button thing on the keyboard. And then we will create a new material, call it tongue as such. Okay. And we'll delete the diffuse, create with Shift A principled shader. Okay, let me just check my other screen to look at the values that I created. All right. So first thing I did is Control T to grab the texture that we made for the tongue. And that is right over here. Okay, let's take a look at it. Pretty nice, a nice gradients going on. We are going to create a hue saturation. I believe I created this for the subsurface color. Yep, exactly that. And we're going to take a look over here. So the values I entered were 0.49 and 2 on the value. I made it brighter. There you go. And we are going to create some bump, but this time we're going to create it with procedural texturing. We don't really need it for the tongue. We're not going to see it. It's inside the mouth, but I did want to show you how procedural texturing works so that you know that you don't always have to go online to find textures. You can create it in Blender and you can create some really interesting stuff. And the advantage from procedural texturing is that you have infinite amount of resolution, so you don't have to worry about that. So let's first take a look at what we got over here. Okay, so the object looks really solid right now, so I'm going to add some subsurface scattering, 0.234. Something similar to the skin. I changed the red to 3 and the rest to 0.3. I found that to be a good value for the tongue. So right now it looks really, really fun. It looks like bubblegum and I really like the look. I went for that. If I remove this, let's take a look. It's a slight change. It makes it a bit brighter. I could increase the saturation to make it redder, but that's what I did for this render and I'm just gonna stick to it because it turned out to be good. So once we do that, we are going to create the procedural texturing. So with Shift A, you can go to texture over here and you get all of different types of procedural texturing with the nodes. I'll let you explore that. The ones we're going to use are the noise texture and the Musgrave texture. I'm going to create a mix node so that I can mix both of them, mix RGB. So the noise one looks like this. We're going to use the factor. I changed the values to 17.590, 7.430 for the detail size. And as for the Musgrave texture, I'll tell you in a second why I created this one. So 4.440, that's about it. So the reason I created this one is because the noise texture by itself looks a bit repetitive as you can see over here. So if I add the factor over here, okay, and then the color of the Musgrave over here, because the color is black and white anyways, so we don't really need the factor, it's the same thing. We are going to change the mix to multiply, and I'm just going to put a low factor. So the more I add over here, the more Musgrave texture we're gonna have over the noise. So just a really small one, 0.227 There you go. So the reason I did this is just to add this to the roughness. So we are going to create a ramp so that we can control the white and black values. I don't want it to be too glossy. And right now we have some really dark values. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the black, the dark color over here, and increase it. Let me just double check the value. So 0.257. Okay. And as you can see, here's the multiply with the color ramp. We really made it lighter so that it doesn't become too glossy when we add it to the roughness. So I'm just doing that to add some interest to the glossiness of the tongue. And I can barely see it on my screen, so I'm not really sure you're gonna see it, but we see a lot of different glossiness going over here, some interesting looks. So yeah, that's pretty much why I did it. Let's get out of that isolated view and take a look at what we got. So yeah, that's pretty much what it looks like with this character. Let me just increase the saturation. You can increase the saturation if you want to. I'm gonna keep it at 1 like I did before. Since it worked, I don't see any reason to change it. And let's see what is left. I mean, we did the teeth, the tongue, the straps, the hair, the eyes. All right, so I'll do that in the next video. I'll see you guys soon.